to Women in Travel Thrive Global Day of Impact, Better Together. Thank you so much and welcome again. Thank you for joining us. I'm Emily Goldfisher and coming to you from London and the EMEA Thrive Hive. Today has been a massive collaboration of our active EMEA Thrive group, which spans the continents. A special shout out to Laura Martinez Salada and Tiziana Flores, who've been very involved behind the scenes with today's presentation. Women in Travel Thrive is a community and a movement that propels women closer to equality in the travel industry by providing connections, networking, education, and tangible resources designed to support the empowerment of women. Please check out the Thrive website to get more involved, and I'll speak a bit more about that later. But for now, it's a pleasure to introduce my dear friend and former college roommate, Deli Moussavi. Of all our plans and dreams in college, I never pictured us on a Zoom, but here we are. She has gone on to have an amazing career as a leadership development executive, speaker, and high-tech marketer, working with Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, and schools. Deli brings a thoughtful perspective as an Iranian immigrant raised in California. After a life transformation, she has shifted her focus to help women step into their power in order to lead and heal their lives. Deli believes the progress of the world depends on our progress as individuals. Job one for us as women is to shift our mindset to loving, caring, and trusting ourselves enough to speak our truth and live in our authentic power, and that the transformation we want begins inside each one of us. I'm really proud of the inspiring leader Deli has become. So without further ado, here's Deli.
Thank you, Emily, and I love you. Who knew? Who knew? Welcome, everybody. I am so honored to be here, and I know that you had a wonderful day and panel yesterday where some amazing execs in the hotel industry and hospitality industry and travel talked about specific case studies. And today, during this 40 minutes together or hour together, I'm going to go very quickly because I'm going to focus on you. I'm going to focus on developing our inner lives so that that emotional resilience gives us a really strong foundation and platform to lead our lives, to lead our work, and to really lead it in a way that's intentional in the way that our heart desires. Emily's going to keep an eye on chat. If you have questions, please put your questions in chat. Just know that I'm going to go really quickly. So if you need me to slow down, I will. I want to make sure that we have the 15 minutes at the end that you're going to do some workshop together. So leadership and emotional resilience in difficult times. Okay, so I'm going to go, here's the quick agenda about me. We'll talk about how and why emotional resilience is really important, foundation of good leadership too, why it's important to feel it, to heal it, the role of intuition in our gut, how to strengthen that muscle. I feel like all the answers we have are inside of us, and sometimes we just don't know how to access it. So I hope today will help with that. I'm going to talk about how we misuse our minds. A mind is a wonderful thing, but it's also a very dangerous thing if it's untrained. So we're going to talk about how to train your mind. Staying in our own power. Often as women, we give our power away. So how do we stay squarely within that and lead from our authentic power, like Emily was talking about? And then we're going to prep for difficult conversations, because part of emotional resilience is having the tough conversations we need to with ourselves as well as with others. That is actually what strengthens relationship. So, and then we'll do the group exercise and debrief while you're actually prep for how to open up a conversation like that in a way that increases the chances that it'll go well. Also, we'll get into breakout rooms. Just know that I will, once I signal that we're going to go into breakout rooms, you will get a notification. So look at your screen and it says join breakout room. You'll click that. And then once I end the breakout room, you will get a 2-minute warning. And after that, you will automatically come back into the main room. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Um, I am just gonna dive in. I'm so excited to be with you. Okay, so a little bit about me. Emily told you about my overall, professional background and how I approach things. I wanted to give you a little bit more so that you understand, why is emotional resilience important to me? Why am I advocating for this for you, for your future, for your career, for your personal well-being? I was born in Iran. I came to the US when I was 5 years old. I still speak Farsi. In Iran, I was really raised by a village. My mom's the oldest of 12. My dad is the middle of 10. I have 60 cousins. I really grew up with a huge family. And at 5 years old, when I came to the US, it was just me and my parents, not just me. But I didn't really know my parents that well, right? Because they were working in Iran and I was raised by everybody else. Once I got to the US, it was very, oh my gosh, you're Iranian, Iranian Persian carpets, cats. Fast forward 1979, I was able to go back to Iran for about a year. Right when I came back, the Iranian Revolution happened and the hostage crisis happened. Some of you may be too young to remember that, but what happened overnight, I was an immigrant in the US. The label terrorist came, right? And even some of my good friends were like, are your family terrorists? So I'm telling you these stories because of why the role of emotional resilience is important. I had some amazing teachers who taught me that. And, at the time, a lot of my friends who were Iranian were even lying and saying, I'm Turkish. And my dad said, you will never do that. Anyway, fast forward, the Iranian Revolution happens. The country as I knew it really disappears, right? There's 7-year war with Iraq. There's women's rights. You see the picture over there, pretty much taken away. A lot of my aunts were executives, no longer possible. You have to cover yourself. So there was war trauma, family trauma. I had, and I'm not saying this to make you sad because I'm very happy in my life today. I'm just saying this to you so you understand. I know what hardship is. And that's why I believe emotional resilience and healing from trauma in our past creates a really strong foundation. Because I could take the choice, let me give you a couple other things that happened. I could take the choice to say, these things happened to me, and so because of my devastation, I can't go forward. But that would be rendering myself powerless. So, it's about 6 years ago, many years ago, I helped launch a leadership development company, and we had a family business that was a global brand. And at the point, one of the owners had mental health issues. Anyway, it blew up. I lost this business that I had created and launched for 13 years. I had to sell my house. I lost my marriage, and I lost part of my family. And then due to something that a personal choice that I had made, my father cut me off for 8 years. Okay. I want to tell you, I'm very happy right now. As a single mom of 2 in the pandemic, my mom ended up in the hospital for a year because of a mistaken surgery. Things happen in our lives. I'm not telling you this so that you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because I'm standing today and I am standing in my joy. And I feel like joy is a revolutionary act. But that cannot happen unless these things happen. And let me go forward. So being resilient, I strongly believe, requires self-compassion, connection, and community. And we're going to break those down in more detail. So self-compassion, I'm going to talk a bit about why feeling it to heal it, feel it to heal it, and the power of intuition are essential to having your inner compass very strongly connected to your self-awareness. And then how self-connection is really the pathway to community, because unless you're connected with yourself, it's very hard to navigate where you stand in a work environment, in your family. So my thesis today is emotional resilience and good leadership flow from healthy self-connection, self-love, and self-trust. These are not luxuries. These are essential things that we have to practice. So let me give you some research. How many of you are familiar with Daniel Goleman? You can just raise your hand if you are. Daniel Goleman was a pioneer in the area of emotional intelligence. And so one of the things that he cites, and emotional intelligence, how many of you are aware of what that is? I'll define it in a moment. It's our ability to be self-aware and to understand how we manage relationships and how we show up in group, and how we manage our own stress, how we interact even with our emotions and the impact it has on us and others. So this research, I think many of us have heard of the Great Resignation. The Great Place to Work Institute and Johns Hopkins University studied the well-being of over 14,000 employees from 37 different countries across people, places, cultures, and the factors that mattered most is personal support, a sense of purpose, and meaningful connections. These three things made the biggest difference to employees' health and happiness. And so one of the things I want to focus on today is how to develop that personal support for yourself. It's important to have a community to help you, but we also have to be our support so we can actually receive help. How many of you feel like it's hard for you to ask for help or receive help? I really want you to reflect on that. And then, of course, a sense of purpose organizes our energy, gives more meaning in our lives, and also helps us be choosy about with whom we are connecting, right? And the energy we let into our lives. So let's talk a little bit about emotional resilience. Emily, are there any questions so far? No. Okay.
Not yet.
Sylvia says, so excited to be here. Let's connect and network. Okay. So emotional resilience. I have the word heal up there on the slide. What does emotional resilience have to do with leadership? Well, one of the most important things is emotional presence. Unless we actually are aware of what we feel and where we are at any given moment, it's very hard to be emotionally present. So when you are emotionally present, when you're not emotionally present, it's hard to see what's actually happening, right? You can make up stories in your head. And resilience has a lot to do with what is our bounce back time, right? When tough things happen, because they're going to happen, right? When tough things happen, how can we feel it, not go into toxic positivity, which is like, I'm going to pretend that didn't happen. How can we acknowledge it, feel it, but then be able to pivot? And part of the ability to pivot is to really know what we feel. And this has been very confusingly taught in our history. So I want to clarify a few things. You have to feel it to heal it. Feel it to heal it. There's one thing that you remember from this morning. I hope it's that. And this is what I mean. It's tied to neuroscience, okay? So how many of you, just raise your hand again, if you feel like you're very, very, very analytical, left brain? It's okay, because that's kind of how I came out. I grew up on Stanford campus, a university. And then how many of you feel like you're pretty right brain, meaning less analytical, more intuitive? So the ideal thing for me here is connecting our heart and mind, smart plus heart. But neuroscience backs up, unless we identify what we feel, so that feeling feeling that we have expands. It expands in conversation, it leaks. Let me just say this. People only remember 7% of the things that you say, okay? And the rest of it is body language and tone. So whether you are aware of it or not, if you are not connected to yourself and what you feel and doing the work to keep yourself clean inside, your junk is going to show up. We are just energy, right? So what happens is when we identify what we heal, it's a braking system. The limbic system, which controls our emotions, operates 80,000 times faster than our rational brain. Can you imagine? That's why when we go into fight, flight, freeze, it's really hard to have a conversation, right? So when we take a breath, which gets oxygen to our brain, I want you to just take a breath right now. That's actually a braking system for being in overdrive. And then when I put my hand under my belly and say, what do I feel? And I'm not asking you how you feel. When you identify the emotion, it no longer controls you. And what I want you to know is that the chemical reaction of an emotion, there's been study done on this, lasts for 90 seconds. So if I put my hand below my belly and I say, I feel angry, I feel really angry. And sometimes, how many of you have had a feeling of like, we didn't grow up in a family where we discussed our feelings, and the idea of feeling a feeling almost feels like I'm gonna die. It feels dangerous. It feels like this feeling might destroy me. It might be like trauma from the past. What I want you to know is that it's safer for you to feel that feeling than push it away. Because in 90 seconds, if we give ourselves 90-second loops, we can kind of cleanse that. Whereas we could avoid a feeling for a year, for 20 years, for a lifetime. And it grows and it grows and it grows. And one day it will catch up with us. But people can feel it in our energy, right? That which is unresolved is still there. So feel it to heal it. Any questions on that? Now, the question a lot of people have asked me is, so Tara says, I think considering emotional presence as women in business is interesting. I look forward to discussing this in our working groups. I agree. You will. And so let's talk about how to feel it to heal it, okay? So I had a business that was called Heart Venture because I believed in smart plus heart, which I still do. But here's what I want to let you know. How many of you, I know I'm going to ask you a lot of questions this morning. How many of you identify as empaths? Okay. So empath, let me just define it, is a person who, our boundaries can be very porous and we pick up other people's feelings very, very easily. So therefore, in a work environment, in a family environment, in environments where other people are there, it's hard to tell, hey, what is it that I feel versus am I picking up somebody else's depression? Am I picking up somebody else's anger? Because feelings are just energy, right? So I want to teach you some skills right now in this moment. What I want you to know is that the heart is very, very important. And the heart I won't get into chakras because not everybody, goes with that system. But I would tell you, for people who are empathic, within our hearts, we also pick up a lot of other people's energy, right? Because compassion rests in our heart. The most important thing in order to be functionally compassionate is to be self-compassionate. So what I'd like you to do is turn the focus to your gut, and that is below your belly. Put your hand below your belly right now. And I want you to just close your eyes for a moment. And an old form of self-hypnosis to get you out of your analytical brain and into your intuition and gut, which, by the way, the gut has brain cells, the heart has brain cells. These are documented. Put your hand below your belly and you ask yourself, what do I feel? Not how do I feel, what do I feel? So you roll your eyes up as you're doing this, as an old form of self-hypnosis. You close your eyes, roll your eyes up to like look towards your eyebrows, and take 2 to 3 deep breaths. What do I feel? And then what I want you to do is stay in your lower body, okay? I say stay in your lower body because I don't want you to be in your head. Your head is not going to tell you, your mind is not going to tell you what you feel. I want you to access your intuition, which is more related to your gut. And yes, the third eye is related to intuition, but intuition is connected to what we actually feel. The more we practice what we actually feel strengthens our intuition. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. So stay in your lower body and just listen. What I want you to know is that often our authentic emotion, like when you ask your gut, what do you feel, has a surprising answer. Okay. It's not always what you think. So how many of you have felt anxious, right? Have a degree of anxiety? I feel like the pandemic and everything we've gone through, many of us, I mean, I'd be shocked if people don't have anxiety, right? So what I want you to do to be able to discern is what anxiety is mind-made and what anxiety is actually authentic. So when your gut and your emotion speaks to you, it is never screaming. It is actually pretty quiet and pretty calm. So whether that is what move to make in a meeting, how you're navigating a dangerous situation late at night, or what to say to your child, go to your gut, because let's talk about the difference between mind-made emotions and authentic emotions. Mind-made emotions are not true emotions. Guilt is a mind-made emotion. Fear is a mind-made emotion. It is false. If you look at fear as an acronym of false evidence appearing real, okay? Shame is a mind-made emotion. So these are not real emotions. These are emotions that we conjure up in our mind, right? And so with fear, if we're walking at night and our hair raises on our back, that's intuition, right? And your intuition will say calmly, this is not a safe thing. But fear never screams, true intuition never screams at you. So again, what do? Put your hand below your belly. You ask yourself, what do you feel? If you put your hand on your heart, you may pick up what everybody else is feeling. That is not what you want to do. It's very, very important to keep your boundaries. So I mentioned forgiveness in emotional resilience because whether you've made a mistake, whether it's work, whether it's home, part of that emotional resilience and feeling what you feel is your ability to forgive yourself and your ability to forgive the other person. We'll go deeper into this, but that's really, really critical in having an effective, tough conversation. Who's the hardest person to confront? It's ourselves. So let's go on to the next slide. I'm going to start moving super quickly. Intuition and our gut. I talked about intuition already. How can our intuition save our rear ends? When we discern what we really feel. Sometimes I feel like I'm completely anxious, my world is spinning, and then when I get into fear, I start to get uncentered. I start to then second guess myself, and then I start to maybe sometimes get paranoid about, hey, did that person, what they said to me, are they trying to be negative? I make assumptions, right? When I get into my intuition, which is connected to understanding what I feel and getting quiet and being in my lower body, which means I'm helping myself get grounded. I put my feet on the ground, connect to the earth. I'm in a state of emotional presence because I have more a sense of what's actually happening. So building that inner compass is essential to our resilience, but it's essential to our leadership because it means that we are able to stay centered. So let me ask you this. How many of you feel like at some point in your life, you focused on external validation, meaning you really focus on people giving you pats on the back, or your boss or your friends or your community telling you how good you are, meaning all that information is important, but relying on it for your self-confidence and self-esteem. When you do that, that is called external validation. And when we externally validate ourselves, we are not centered, right? My groundedness then depends on what people say, what people do. And what people say or do is none of my business because it's about them. It's not about me. So what I want to do is internally validate myself. I want to befriend myself. And in order to do that, I need to know what my messages to me are. And that is intuition as a daily practice. And what it feels like and sounds like, intuition is very kind. Intuition is very soft. But you got to listen. You got to listen. And our mind gets in the way of that. If you look at Einstein quotations, you will be amazed at how many times he cites intuition as a way forward to solving issues. So again, the more that you feel it to heal it, the more you're strengthening your intuition, which is more of the truth than our mind tells us. So let's go to the next. Hey, my slide is not forwarding. There we go. Okay, that's right. I forgot that this was the next slide. A little word on emotional intelligence. This comes, Key Step Media actually put this together. This comes from Daniel Goleman's four key areas of emotional intelligence. And here on top, you see the the letters IQ and EQ. IQ is the level, the IQ test is the level of our intelligence, right? But it's very misleading because a lot of people who are successful don't necessarily have the highest IQ, but they have incredibly high EQ, emotional quotient. So the four areas that Daniel Goleman identifies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. And you can look at these details on your own time, but the point that I want to make here is this on the left. Self-awareness, research finds, is the foundation of emotional intelligence. So what they found is that those people who develop their self-awareness, right, that's part of your self-connection, develop strengths in many or most of the other 12 EI competencies. And these competencies are all in these little circles, whether it's empathy, adaptability, emotional balance, emotional self-awareness, your ability to influence, manage conflict, collaborate as a team member, be an inspiring leader. So those who lack self-awareness are unlikely to develop strengths in the other EI competencies, emotional intelligence competencies. So I'm telling you that because I'm making the case of please befriend yourself, spend time on developing your internal life because self-awareness is number one. Okay. Emily, checking with you. Any questions? Okay.
Not at the moment.
I'm gonna motor. Okay, I appreciate that because we'll have time for questions in the end. Okay, so how we misuse our minds and brains. I will quickly go through this. We have about 90,000 thoughts a day. That is an extraordinary amount of thoughts. And let me just tell you something. Most of them are lies. Okay, we have internalized voices, criticism, maybe some of how we were raised, something our teacher said to us, maybe, look, you'll never be an artist, you'll never be a leader. It's very important. You know how we wake up and we choose our clothes? I love the author Elizabeth Gilbert said this. We are intentional about how we choose our clothes. We must be intentional about how we choose our thought. The thought that you choose to focus on expands. So what are you going to feed? Are you going to feed the negative thoughts, or are you going to feed and be strategic about thoughts that aid you to love yourself, to befriend yourself? Okay, Because where we get it wrong is that we think our minds, our analytical minds, are going to solve it all. That is not how the best solutions come. The best solutions arrive when we can be centered, which doesn't mean, by the way, mindfulness does not mean I'm going to get the noise away from my mind. Mindfulness means I'm going to be okay with the noise in my mind. These practices help me to get distance and understand that as these thoughts come and go like clouds, it doesn't mean that they are real. I get to choose. But what's really scary about me choosing is that it puts the accountability in my hands. So the good news is when you take ownership of your inner life, you also take accountability for your life. And accountability has become a bad word, and I want to turn it into a very powerful word because it means you're empowering yourself. I want you to understand the mind has no idea what it's doing. None. I think it was the author Jonathan Safran Foer said, I think and think and think. I've never once thought myself into happiness. That's not how it comes. So the goal is to be present in the moment, to be conscious, to be aware. So let's put the mind in its rightful place. It's very handy, right? We need it, especially in the present moment, but it cannot lead. It is not meant to lead. So we have to anchor our mind, train it. I love one of my healing mentors taught me that a mind is like a dog, right? It's wonderful. It can be powerful, but you're not going to let your dog off the leash in a busy road, right? Or at least my dog, I know, will run into the middle of that road. Okay, so let's move to, I love this quotation by Einstein, which I've used for many years as I taught leaders. And by the way, working with executive coaches from Fortune 500 companies, they said that the number one challenge that the leaders they work with have is emotional intelligence and tackling tough conversations and being honest with themselves, and having the courage to navigate those things. So Einstein says we should take care not to make the intellect our God. Of course, it has, powerful muscles, but no personality. It can only serve. So what we define in our life is, again, that sense of purpose when it comes from self-connection and asking myself in the moment, whether it's regarding a project, my career direction, my personal relationship with my partner, or my parenting relationship. Please express to me, I ask my intuition this, please express to me what's in my highest, greatest good. And not only do we forget to ask our community for help, but we forget to ask for help of our own highest selves, because we have an intuitive intelligence that knows. We just often don't know how to access it. So 7:34, doing a little time check. Okay, so staying in your authentic power. Please don't give yourself away. When I talked about self-compassion being the pathway to self-connection, being the pathway to then being in community in a healthy way, those of you, how many of you feel like there's just a caretaking aspect to your personality? So I want you to know that that's not a bad thing. It's just that you have to take care of yourself first. There is no way around that. And when I say love yourself, I'm not talking about kumbaya. I'm talking about you have to do that. It may be the hardest thing you do in your life. You have to find a way to love yourself enough to self-worth, because when those 90,000 thoughts in the mind go crazy, we have to find a way to change our self-talk to positive self-talk. Again, I'm not talking about toxic positivity, forcing ourselves to feel great. We have to feel the difficult feelings that come up. That's part of resilience, right? And know that we'll live through it. Know that it's only a 90-second chemical reaction. Then we want to change that self-talk, because right now, if we have a negative recorder going on, and if you made the internal dialogue in your head one of your friends, that would be a very toxic friend. I need you to take that dialogue in your head and shower yourself with love. And even if it's calling yourself honey. And here's why. When you encounter tough situations, you may encounter people putting you down. You may encounter people dismissing you. As a woman, let's talk about equity. My first really serious tech job, I was making half the amount of my male counterparts. The salaries had leaked. So when I encountered that, though, I was a very high achieving student when I was growing up, but I did it for my father, right? But I had very low self-esteem. When you have low self-esteem, your resilience is very low and you turn against yourself. I hope this makes sense. So if someone attacks you, or if you encounter abusive language or an abusive situation, instead of getting more centered, you can contribute to that abuse by engaging in self-abuse. Do you know what I mean by that? I think many of you probably do, because our negative self-talk tries to justify, why have I come up against these hard circumstances in life? Whereas if you're practicing daily how to stay in your body, keep your energy to yourself instead of giving it away. So here's what that looks like in a physical way. It's drawing up energy from the molten core of the earth. Okay, so I want to draw energy into my body. Picture like wooden straws, picture my feet connected to the heart of the earth. And I want to cycle this energy throughout, especially my lower body, because that's where my sense of groundedness, my sense of belonging, my sense of safety and security comes from that lower part of our body, right? We've got to feel safe. And what I'm telling you is you can help be your own safety. So identify what brings you joy every single day. Again, not pretending that difficult things don't happen, but when difficult things do happen, I want you to, whether it's a flower, whether it's your child's voice, whether it's a memory from the past, I want you to stop what you're doing, take a breath in. Remember, that's getting oxygen to your brain. It's a braking system for the limbic system. And I want you to be present to that feeling, because as you practice to receive what brings you joy, you start to increase your self-respect and you start to build equity within the self-connection that you have. And the other thing is, speak your truth to power respectfully. And that's what we're going to go to next. Taking risks means getting comfortable with discomfort. Growth means being comfortable with discomfort. So what happens is, let's go to even, actually, I want to read this Joseph Campbell quotation: "The cave you enter holds the treasure you seek." So even if you might feel fear, remember, it's a mind-made emotion. What builds your self-esteem and confidence is feeling afraid and doing it anyway, and knowing that you survived, and even getting people in the community to support you. And it's really hard to get support unless you support yourself too. Okay, so next slide, navigating difficult conversations. I want to quickly go through this because then I'm going to put you in your breakout sessions. So all of this talk about building your inner resilience is really important, because when we come to have difficult conversations with ourselves or others, how many of you just get nervous? Raise your hand. We can have anxiety, we get nervous, we think about, oh my gosh, this person's going to retaliate. This person may not like me anymore. Oh my gosh, the person that I may have a difficult conversation with may be my boss, which I've had to do my entire career. So all the practices that I gave you are essential to showing up to this conversation in a centered way. And so the prep, you have to be focused and know what your intention is for the conversation, right? And clean yourself internally. The opening has to be short, clear, no attack, because the moment you attack someone, they shut down. The exchange needs to be an exchange, a conversation. Con means with. You have to listen to learn in addition to talking. So you have to genuinely be curious about what that person is saying and go into the conversation with this person, not against them. It's like, we're going to look at my version of the truth. We're going to look at your version of the truth. There's not one single version of the truth. So, and I mentioned this before, if you're confronted with abusive language, or if you're confronted with someone who is in fight, flight, freeze, do not turn against yourself. That is the moment that you will go sideways and abandon yourself. Okay? So what you need to do at that point is love on yourself hard. And what that means is like, you're okay. I mean, you have to be the source of that for yourself. So let's get into the tool of actually, how am I going to open this conversation in a way that significantly increases the chances that it'll go well? Be clear. You're going to be very clear about the issue. Let's say something has happened 3 or 4 times. You have to find the theme of it. Maybe it's the way this person communicates. I had a boss in my life who, her communication style, and I had a male boss that was like this too. The communication was, what she was saying had merit, but how she said it felt very demeaning and demoralizing. But I would never start the conversation that way, right? So I had to think about, how can I talk with her about this and say, the way to open it might be, I want to talk with you about the impact your communication style is having on me. And that is not an attack. But if I said, I want to talk with you about the fact that you're demoralizing, that's an attack, right? That person's going to shut down. So then be honest and clear about what you feel. No editorializing. It's even okay to say I'm angry. You just can't act it out. I feel concerned. I feel frustrated. Put your hand below your belly. Be honest, because you can't fake that. People will know if the feeling is off. Be specific, concrete examples. No example means no. And by the way, put your questions in chat. That way Emily will help guide me. When you have no examples, then the person doesn't feel the credibility. So it means examples, like as you would see through a video screen, like concrete behavior. You talked to me the last week when we were talking and a client was there, you raised your voice. You in your tone felt very accusatory in our conversation. So be specific and no more than 1 or 2 examples, because it's too much for people to take. And widen the lens. You want to give perspective in this conversation. By the way, this is only like 1 or 2 minutes. Widen the lens to say, this conversation is important because it impacts our team. It impacts our relationship, you and I. It impacts our work. It impacts, or if it's personal, it impacts his family, or it impacts, our relationship as co-parents, whatever it may be. And then take responsibility for your part. My part is XYZ. What's your intention and desired outcome is really critical, because you need to know, the other person needs to know that your intention is to resolve it. If you don't want to resolve the issue, then you shouldn't be having this conversation, right? Then you don't want the relationship. But you want to say within that 1 minute or not, I want to resolve this. And that person's like, because nobody loves to be confronted. Nobody. So then you want to hear from what they say. You want to hear what they say. Listen to the other person's perspective. Look at these steps. I'm going to put you into breakouts now. Emily, if you could give me a sense of how many people we have, that way I'll know how many breakout rooms. And what I'm going to ask you to do in these breakout rooms is the first 3 minutes, we're going to have 15 minutes of breakout. The first 3 minutes, you're going to write a statement. You're going to think about a real difficult conversation that you need to have. And then you're going to write, what is it? How do you think you can open this conversation? That's like the first 3 minutes. Then in the remaining time, I want two people to read their opening statement to each other, and get feedback. So I would go first and then get feedback from the other person, like, am I being judgmental, or are the words great and the tone isn't good? So let's do that. Okay, so first write your statement, then you're going to read your statement to each other. If we have more than 3 people in the room, the third person is always the witness. When we debrief, you're going to say what you noticed about the interaction and what was going on. So you're going to coach each other. Okay, I'm going to put us into breakout rooms.
Okay,
right
it should
now.
be 8 different rooms. Okay.
Okay, we're going to do that right now. And oops, 8. Hold on just a second, because hey, recreate. We're going to do 8 rooms. And you'll get a 2-minute warning. Okay, here we go.
Did that work?
So click on join breakout. And if you're having any issues, please let us know.
There's still, I think, 3 people who aren't in a room, Deli.
Okay,
Oh,
so
wait. No, wait a minute. I think they're Anna and
Anna, I'm going
and
to,
Giselle.
okay, hold on just a second. Let me help. Oop. Hold on just a sec. This is the joy of Zoom. We've got Giselle and Anna who are not in a room. So I'm going to try to put you in a room right now.
Oh, Giselle just said, sorry, I can't join the breakout.
Yeah, Giselle, I have
Oh,
moved her.
okay. And Anna,
Okay.
would you like to be in a room? Okay, so Sylvia may need to join.
Nuria, and room 3. I moved Sylvia to room 3.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, now so people had to leave. And okay, two, okay, good. 3, 4, 5. We have 5 rooms. The other people, they had to leave, but at least those are with 2 and 3 people.
Looks good, yeah. Good job, Deli. I was engaged. A couple took some notes.
Good. I could have done a better job of my timing, but thank you for that feedback.
That's good. I was gonna say to you, I actually sent it to Laura by mistake, that they, in the UK, they call that the negative self-talk. They call that the shitty committee. Have you heard that before?
I love that. I love that.
That's yeah. So they're like, whenever I listen to like UK podcasts or whatever, they're like, so you need to shut down the shitty committee. You need to tell the shitty committee.
But yeah,
you need to shut that down.
It's true, and the shitty committee can derail your career.
Yeah.
You know, the shitty committee, it has the power you give it. I love that. Love that. It's like on Australia, you know how in the At least in the US, we talk about the Oreo cookie. You give someone a compliment and then you punch them and then you give them another compliment. In Australia, they call it the shit sandwich.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard the shit sandwich. But that also, I mean, I've heard that. Do you ever listen to that guy from what's it called? I'm blanking on this show, but it's Morning Brew. Do you ever, he has a podcast, the Morning Brew guy.
No,
Anyway,
but I
and
will.
he says that that really undermines you as a leader because people don't know what to believe.
It's
Like,
true. It's
that
absolutely true because
if you put the negative in between two compliments, people don't necessarily get that what you really want is change on that one negative thing.
absolutely. And what's even worse is that then when they compliment you, you don't trust their compliment because you're just waiting for the other shoe to
True.
drop,
Yeah.
And so it's a horrible, I mean, even though so many people were trained on it, it's a horrible way to try to, because we're afraid, we're trying to make ourselves comfortable, but it actually reduces trust.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard about the shit sandwich.
Yeah, I know. It's like, don't give me that. So I think that's why it's really important to, we say in when I'm training or teaching leaders, it's like schedule separate conversations for compliments. And then make that a conversation, make it specific. So when you're telling someone what a great job they did, that in itself doesn't mean anything. But if you say, what I loved about what you did is XYZ, the data you collected, the way you took complexity and you be specific, and then engage them in a conversation. Like, so I just gave you this compliment. How do you feel? How do you feel about it? How do you feel you did?
Okay.
There's so much.
Wait, so we had two questions. One was to recommend books, podcasts, or any workshops. So maybe after the podcast, after this session, we should offer up a list to participants or on the Thrive LinkedIn page. I'm sure you have a list like that.
Yeah. I would be happy
and then
to give.
Okay.
We had one question that was, what if the other person doesn't want to engage? Whoever you have to have.
Yeah, that's great. That often happens. So shall I, because we're so short on time, I think I'll talk about that really quickly in the wrap up.
Okay.
Let me see, what time is it right now? I might just cut the breakout a little bit short.
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably would work because they're pretty small rooms anyway. So.
Right. And I noticed a lot of people wanted to listen to the talk, but then not so much the breakout.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, we definitely lost about half for the breakouts.
Yeah, which is fine.
Good learning for us. As
it is good learning. It's a lot of times I have, a lot of times I have the breakouts in the middle.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and then just make it shorter breakouts. So you have like a 3-minute breakout, a 5-minute breakout.
Okay.
But it's good learning. It's good learning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's 54.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring them back?
I think this way you have 6 minutes to to say thanks.
Let's do that. Hold on just a second. Oops. Okay, let's bring them back. Okay, they'll get the 60-second warning.
Correct, yeah. In 37 seconds, it will close.
Okay, great.
Yeah, people are coming back.
Okay,
Okay.
welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so I know that was cut a little bit short, but let's just hear from anyone, like just feedback you got, questions. This was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. How did that go, just even like attempting to write an opening statement and also considering walking into addressing a tough issue? I really want to hear from some of you.
Anyone, or Del, you could go for the question that was given in the break.
Yeah. It's and so we had a question that was, what if I have someone who doesn't want to talk? So this question has come up often, and that is, listen, extend the invitation again and again. So that may not be the right time to do it, but what I've done in the past is say, look, I really want to talk with you because my intention is I want to resolve this with you. So a lot of times when people understand what the intention is, then they're more game, because they're like, I don't want to sign up for a blame session, right? That's the thing. One of the statements, the person who can describe reality without laying blame emerges the leader. I really want you to remember that. So how can I describe what's happening to me in a way that impacts me, but is not ascribing blame? So I extend the invitation again. I wait a few weeks, I extend it again. And it's more about saying, my intention is to resolve this. Sometimes someone doesn't want to resolve it, and that is out of your control. You have to, in that sense, accept that. The other thing I just wanted to say again is spending all this time on emotional resilience and controlling your mind. It doesn't mean control. It's like when you're clear in your purpose on how you're a good person, you're a competent person, you are deserving, and you receive your own magnificence. I want you to know that most of the time in life, what we're afraid of is not just failures, because failure is what teaches us. What we're often afraid of is our own magnificence. And I want you to know that that is the bigger fear. So I mentioned to Emily and Laura that we're going to forward to you a list of resources, books, podcasts that I love, and Emily, you can throw in yours as well. I want to leave you just with a couple quotations. Anais Nin, who said, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." So as you deepen your own relationship with yourself, you show up with better connection with others and in community, you are able to ask for help more and speak your truth. And you have to believe in yourself when no one else does. And then lastly, we were never meant to do this alone. So better together has been the theme of this conference. And thank you so much for the time and energy. This is just, again, the progress of our world depends on our progress as individuals. So I hope you make it a decision to stay in your power and practice staying in your power every day. That's my email. That's my website. I have a podcast called Unwritten You Podcast. You can find it on Apple or Spotify. And then take it away. Thank you.
Oh my God, Deli.
Shout out to Laura and Tiziana and Emily, and thank you, Thrive.
Thank you, Deli. Thank you so much. I definitely feel it to heal it. It's burned in my brain now. So I am really grateful to you for sharing all your wisdom and your ideas with us and with the Thrive group. And just to wrap it up with the Thrive community, just to remind you that check out the Thrive website. We have empowerment bundles, we have a newsletter, a match program. So there's plenty of opportunities to do networking, to find resources that will help you in your career and in your life. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. A lot of nice comments here, Deli, coming through on the chat as we say goodbye to everyone. But anyone, check out the Thrive. We'll definitely be posting on LinkedIn as well, resources and a recording of this if you know anyone who wanted to be here but had to miss it. So thank you, Deli. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so
Tiana.
much.
Okay, bye.
Have a great day, everybody, and evening. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.